I spoke to a woman who shared her story with me.
She should first take into account what really happens before telling a story of that magnitude.
She is a victim's right advocate who is telling this is what drug cartels are doing.
She was not trafficked by Mexican drug cartels.
Everyone is still completely stunned by Katie Britt's weird and overly dramatic response to Biden's State of the Union on Thursday night, including Republicans who, like all of us, were asking what the hell they were watching and thought that it was cringe-inducing and creepy and predicted that it would be turned into a lame Saturday Night Live skit. And guess what? It was, because on Saturday evening, Scarlett Johansson did a phenomenal job recapturing the horror of Katie Britt's weird speech. But when you put aside Britt's bad acting and just look at the substance, she told multiple egregious lies. For example, she claimed that Biden defunded the police. That is just factually incorrect. And as a matter of fact, Biden actually supports increasing funding to police. So he agrees with her position. I wish that he supported defund the police, but he doesn't. Now, on top of that, she also lied by innuendo and omission, and she misrepresented one woman's human trafficking story so badly that that woman felt compelled to come out and publicly condemn her. I'm talking about Karla Jacinto, and she provides us with context that makes it very clear Britt never actually cared about her story, and that feigned concern that we saw on Thursday was nothing more than an act, a bad one at that. So let's first look back at the moment where Britt referenced the woman in question.
I traveled to the Del Rio sector of Texas. That's where I spoke to a woman who shared her story with me. She had been sex trafficked by the cartels starting at the age of 12. She told me not just that she was raped every day, but how many times a day she was raped. The cartels put her on a mattress in a shoebox of a room, and they sent men through that door over and over again for hours and hours on end. We wouldn't be okay with this happening in a third world country. This is the United States of America.
Now, she brought this up while talking about Biden's border policy, and implied that it happened under his watch, even though she didn't explicitly say that. But it didn't happen under Biden's watch, and she also claimed that this took place in the United States. But that's not true either. In fact, CNN reached out to Jacinto, and she explained all of the things that Britt got wrong about her story that she didn't have permission to share, mind you. And by the way, there were multiple things that Britt said about her story that were just factually incorrect.
And Erica, Karla Jacinto also told me that Senator Britt got many of the facts of her story wrong. First of all, Jacinto says that one, she was not trafficked by Mexican drug cartels, but by a pimp that operated as part of a family that entrapped vulnerable girls in order to force them into prostitution. Two, she also said that she was never trafficked in the United States, as Senator Britt appeared to suggest. Three, she was kept in captivity from 2004 to 2008 when President George W. Bush, a Republican, was in office, as opposed to the current administration, as the senator implied. And four, she met the senator at an event at the border with other government officials and anti-human trafficking activists instead of one-on-one. CNN has confirmed much of what Jacinto has said in prior reporting, and her story hasn't changed since we first spoke. Jacinto told me no one reached out to her to ask for her permission to use her story as part of a political speech. Someone using my story and distorting it for political purposes, she told me, is not fair at all.
So the woman that Britt claimed to care so much about is now accusing her of exploiting her story for political purposes. And she's correct. That is exactly what Katie Britt is doing. But understand why Britt decided to lie. Concerns about drug cartels feeds directly into right-wing hysteria about the border, and if Americans believe that this tragedy happened within our borders, it kind of demonstrates just how bad things have gotten under Biden. So Katie Britt, in telling this woman's story and butchering it, is trying to conjure up a very specific image in our minds about immigrants, and she wants us to view the issue in a particular way, in a bigoted way, so that way we think, wow, if these migrants are crossing the border, maybe they're also like the cartel. Maybe they're going to be violent towards women like these people who did that to that woman. But here's the thing. We don't have open borders, nor do we have a crisis at the border. The only issue with regard to the influx of migrants is our inability to process all of them in a timely manner. It's a funding issue, not an invasion, period. Statistically, immigrants are far less likely to commit crime than citizens, despite sensationalist headlines. But if one commits a crime, well, we're going to hear about that endlessly because they want you to think that that is a generalization that you should apply to all migrants when that's just not factually true. And these immigrants that come here that they continue to fearmonger about, they contribute massively to our economy and even pay taxes, but yet they can't vote and don't get any of the benefits of citizenship, contrary to popular belief. Immigrants are kept in a perpetual state of exploitation, yet they're treated as if they're the cause of all of our problems when that's just not the case. And let's keep it real. The people screeching the most about immigrants, they're doing so because they're xenophobic and probably wouldn't mind them being here if they were white. I mean, come on, you're all thinking it. Let's just say it. But nobody ever asks why so many people are here in the first place. They're coming here because of us. Decades of meddling, militarism, and our failed drug war has destabilized and destroyed so many Latin American countries, and we're now seeing the consequences of our failed policies. Nobody wants to acknowledge the fact that our drug war has emboldened cartels. Both parties, Democrats and Republicans who perpetuate the drug war, have emboldened cartels. And if we really wanted to undercut the black market and minimize fentanyl overdoses, we would legalize and regulate all drugs and then use the tax revenue generated from that towards rehabilitation and rebuilding Latin American countries that we destroyed. But why do that when you can just continue to fearmonger about drugs and scapegoat immigrants to win elections forever? But let's hear more from the woman whose story was exploited by Britt, because she's not done yet.
At one point when I met you years and years ago, you told me that you felt like at the beginning, Mexican politicians had taken advantage of you by using your story for political purposes. Do you feel like that happened once again here in the United States?
Yes. In fact, I hardly ever cooperate with politicians because it seems to me that they only want an image. They only want a photo. And that to me is not fair. I work as a spokesperson for many victims who have no voice, and I really would like them to be empathetic. All the governors, all the senators to be empathetic with the issue of human trafficking, because there are millions of girls and boys who disappear all the time. People who are really trafficked and abused, as she mentioned. And I think she should first take into account what really happens before telling a story of that magnitude.
And it's clear that she didn't do that because the goal was to sensationalize that story and fearmonger about migrants so that way moms just like her who are watching are worried more about the danger that migrants pose to their families instead of other things that actually pose a danger to their families, like climate change or lead pipes, which, side note, that's a thing that Republicans, I guess, support now. At least Kansas Attorney General Chris Kobach attacked Biden for replacing lead pipes. But I mean, that's a different story for a different day. The point is, Republicans don't want to deal with the actual crises that affect Americans in a material way, which is why they're always trying to scare you into thinking that migrants or trans people or the woke mob or crime is the actual thing that you should be worried about, when in actuality, it's their donors who keep bleeding the rest of us dry that's causing all the problems. But Katie's lie didn't go unnoticed, and she was even confronted about this on Fox News.
But to be clear, the story that you relayed is not something that's happened under the Biden administration, that particular person.
Well, I very clearly said I spoke to a woman who told me about when she was trafficked when she was 12. So I didn't say a teenager. I didn't say a young woman, a grown woman, a woman when she was trafficked when she was 12. And so listening to her story, she is a victim's right advocate who is telling this is what drug cartels are doing. This is how they're profiting off of women. And it is disgusting. And so I am hopeful that it brings some light to it, and we can actually do something about human trafficking, and that's what the media actually decides to cover.
She can lie and obfuscate all she wants, but again, she brought up this story within the context of Biden's failed border policies, and within the span of a minute, got multiple details wrong. She got caught disingenuously framing this story, and rather than just apologizing like a normal person, she's still pretending to care about the story that she exploited. embarrassing. She is so phony. The good news is her speech was so shockingly bad that she single-handedly killed her own career and any chance of her becoming Trump's VP or moving up within the GOP. That's how much she turned off normal people and the Republican Party. And she also managed to somehow give away the GOP's game when it comes to immigration. And now even more Americans know that when the GOP talks about immigration, they're lying to you, and it's all just one big act, as she demonstrated firsthand and pretty brilliantly on national television. So I guess thanks, Katie.
Like everywhere there's glows, you see them all the time. I mean, it's constant. My children will be like, Mama, glow, 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 glow. I turn on TV, there's glows in the background. Every TV show, news media, why?
Glow, 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 glow. They're everywhere. Glow, 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 glow.